Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Bava Kama Daf Tes Vav. We're going to begin on the bottom of Yud Dalid Amud Beis by the two dots, 5 lines from the bottom. Al Pi Eidim. So our Mishnah was telling us different ideas regarding the laws of damages, and it said that, for example, as we saw in yesterday's daf, Shava Kesef, which is referring to the collection of only land. This Mishnah is talking about Yisaimim, namely that the father, their father, who is responsible for some form of damage, he died. So now you can only collect from Yisaimim Karka. Otherwise, as we said, you can always collect from anything, even Subin, even bran. And then the Mishnah said, Bifnei Beistin, which you have to have a court of experts, Mumchin, and not Hidyotos. So now we're up to Alpi Eidim. Prat l'moed b'kanas v'yachach bo Eidim shehu potter. We know that when it comes to kanas, when it comes to generally kanas, which is a penalty above and beyond what that person did, is a kanas, not just din mammons, then kanas. If you admit to it, you're potter. However, here it's telling you that not only if you admit to it, but even if you admit to it and then witnesses come afterwards, you're still going to be potter. That's a chiddush. Now, it's actually machlokas. So if you hold actually your chayv in that case, then what would this be coming to add? So your answer is nothing, but it's just a build on the next part of the Mishnah. Seifa itzrichle. We need it for the latter part of the Mishnah, which is what? As we continue to test Melvin Aleph. B'nei chayrin uvnei bris. So says Rashi, b'nei chayrin shiu ha'edim b'nei chayrin uvnei bris. Those witnesses must fall into that category. So b'nei chayrin need to be free as l'muti avadim, not slaves. B'nei bris, what does that mean? L'muti ovi kachavim, someone who's not of the Jewish faith. Tzricha, why do you need both? This is actually question 7. Amai itzrich l'misni tarti v'osagi b'chada v'neilef l'idach. Diashmin an Eved. If it only said that an Eved is disqualified because he has no yichus, as it's discussed in Kedushin, as well as Rashi quotes in Yevamos, that says Hakol moidim be'Eved she'en lo yachas. T'chsiv im hachamor am hadam lechamor. So when it came to the Kiddush Yitzchak, so Avraham and Yitzchak rather went up. And Avram said, stay with the donkeys. So we made the drasha that Elazar, Eved Avram, was daim l'chamor. So he has no yichus. So certainly we're going to disqualify him from doing edus. However, when it comes to a nachri who does have a connection to yichus, as Rashi quotes, over there it also says this, Hadrimoin ben Tavrimoin ben, as it says on the side, Chezioin. So why does it mention the son of? Obviously, because there's yichus. So maybe because there's yichus, that Ovi Kachavim should also be able to testify. Obviously, the fact that a person is not just for himself, but he also has to think about the reputation of his family, Pagam Mishpacha, maybe that's enough of a reason we should say he should be able to give edus. Yashmin and Nachri, Mishom Doshach b'mitzvahs. A Nachri doesn't have many mitzvahs to do. However, when it comes to an Eved, Rashi says, is of course referring to an Eved Kanani, not an Eved Ivri, but an Eved Kanani is shaykh b'mitzvahs shanoshim chayavos behen. As you learn out of Gezer Shavash Lolo Meisha. So since they're accustomed to many laws and rules, maybe we should also allow them to be able to participate in the laws of going to a court and testifying. You know, Kachavim, who has minimal laws, okay, they have the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, but basically very minimal laws, so they may not be accustomed to following these particular types of rules. And then the Mishnah at the end says that women are included. So women are like men. So this is the Mishnah and the upcoming Gemara of women's rights. So Menhanimili, how do we know that women have the same rights as men regarding many matters of the Torah, almost all matters of the Torah? There's a very famous Gemara, as you can see on the side, Psachim. Most recently we had it in Kedushin, it's in many places. V'chein Tana Rabbi Shmuel, 3 psukim. Omicron, on one hand, the pasuk says, Isho Isha Kiyas Mikol Chatos. a man or a woman who does a sin. So in that case, they're able to achieve kapara. When it comes to punishments, the laws are the same, and we allow them different punishments, but it's really a form of them achieving kapara. So they're equal. That's answer number one. All the laws. You go through the Parsha Mishpatim, it talks about tort law, it talks about many different laws. So when it comes to, especially with business dealings, so men and women are equal in that too. And then Rabbi Yosef Behemoth Isha, referring to the a man or a woman who dies. So So now the question is, why do you need 3 psukim? Now they're all different. One has to do with oinshin, one is dinin, and one is misois. Why all 3? Tzrichim. Diashmin and Kamaisav, it only had the case of oinshin, so obviously women should be included. After all, Hasim who maybe if only mentioned the Kamaisa the first, Hasim who duchas rachman aleha Allah, they have mercy. The punishments are merciful. So instead of her just saying you're scot-free, it means she's not going to achieve kapara. We want her to achieve kapara. So therefore, we're not going to make a difference between a woman and a man. Dinin, when it comes to business matters, ish davar masumatan in, ish aloi. Men generally, at least then, were more engaged in business dealings. So maybe the laws apply to men and not to women. And that's the reason why we need to mention that. Be'el mishpatim. One second. The other way around you should look at it, because we need women to be able to live. And Rashi says, if women don't, there's no laws, habi parshi tagari mina, people are going to separate from them. No one's going to want to do business with them. If they know that there's no possible laws attached to doing business with someone, there's no recourse, you're going to be concerned to not want to do business. It's too risky. So obviously women need to have the same laws when it comes to business matters. Of a kapara, to achieve atonement, ish davar mitzvah in, ish dalav bas mitzvah loy. Maybe since men have more mitzvahs, so maybe for some reason you would maybe think that kapara should only be allowed to be achieved. Maybe you can say because they have so many more mitzvahs, there's a greater likelihood you can maybe make a mistake because there's so many things you have to do. Women have a smaller number of mitzvahs, but obviously a lot. So maybe they shouldn't be able to receive kapara. You have to think about the spar of that. The first two, there's logical reasons why women should be included. Either she should get kapara, she's needed in the business world, and without these laws, she's not going to be able to function. When it comes to death, ish davar mitzvah shalom kaifer, ish lo. It's a difficult line, but when it comes to death, a man who's davar mitzvah should pay kaifer, a woman not. So we'll understand that in a second, Rashi. Let's look at the other. Let's finish this up. The Yashmin and Kaifer, the din of having to pay Kaifer when a person dies, Mishum Dikadim and Neshama. It shouldn't make any difference if a man or a woman. If someone died, someone died. We don't value one person's life over the other. It's even Neshama. And there's even Neshama, there's a chi of kapara of having to pay Kaifer for that, either that person's value or your value, depending how you this is the Beinisi to be mazik, more in Makos in the beginning over there. Okay. Maybe when it comes to Ibn Neshama, it's like that's where we're very strict. But maybe other cases we don't compare women to men. No. All these different cases we compare women to men. Equal rights. Look at this Rashi. It's a hard havami to understand. This is what Rashi says. Each of our mitzvahs, since men do mitzvos mishal bal hashor kaifer liyorshim. So the man was killed by an ox. So I have to pay the yorshim his value. Mishum debatlim in mitzvos, because this man can't do mitzvos anymore. So since he loses the opportunity, you've stripped this person away because he died from doing mitzvos, his contribution to society is unbelievably great, and it's lost forever. So therefore, because they have to pay kaifer. However, a woman who has less mitzvos, so for some reason you would think you don't have to pay kaifer. Again, you have to flesh that out a little bit better, but that's just the pashut shot. Okay, but again, whether the havamina is a little bit of a painful havamina, pumfakert. The maskana is what you need to focus on. I don't care what the havamina is. The maskana is the reality. The reality is you're wrong. That's not true. It's not true. We don't value a woman's life less than a man just because a man may have more mitzvos. That's incorrect. Kamash Malan. It's not true. So you can kind of pull it that way and understand that a woman's life is just as valuable as a man's life. And that is the reason why, that's what the pasuk is coming to tell you. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, you pay koifer. Okay. Hanizik mamazik batashlumin. Okay. Itmar. So we learn like this. Palganiska. So we've already been introduced that under certain circumstances, pashut shot, when a Karen horn does damage, and it's the first few times, the animal is not a mu'id, it's still a tam, you pay chatzin nezek. Now, what is the reason that you pay half? Because it's not true. Why would you pay only half? You should pay the whole thing. So on this we have an important concept. Rav Papa Eimer Mamoina, Rav Huna Bar Rav Yeshua Eimer Kanasa. So machlokas. Is the chatzin nezek under the din of mamoin or is the din knas? Let's understand this. Rav Papa Eimer Mamoina. It's money. Ksaver. Stam shvarim la b'cheskas shimer kaimen. The truth is, an ox, even though it's called a tam, the truth is, it's an animal that needs to constantly be watched. Therefore, even the first time it does damage, you should really mikr hadin, din mamoin. You should be required to pay the whole thing. However, the Torah says we're going to have mercy on you. We're going to give you a 3-strike rule. Since your ox has not yet become a mu'id, so you only have to pay chatzin nezek. Really, you have to pay full. So therefore, the chatzin nezek is a kindness, but it's a din mamoin. We'll have to understand what the difference is if it's mammon or kanas. You still have to pay it. Of course, as we already established, might be kanas potter, so that could certainly be a nafkamina. Let's see. So that's one way of looking at it. Rav Huna Bar Rav Yeshua Eimer no kanasa. Actually, it's a kanas. We're making you pay above and beyond what you really should have to. Why? Because you should assume when you have a shore that this is a normal, regular ox that's not going to do any damage. You don't have to go out of your way to spend so much time guarding this. And then all of a sudden it did damage, which should surprise the whole world. Therefore, if it did you shouldn't really have to pay anything because no one would have anticipated this. Brachmanahu the can say, now the Rabbanan say, the Torah says rather, that we're going to make you pay half. Even though technically you don't have to. But we're going to give you a penalty to make you pay half. Kehechi delintere latore, to let you understand we mean business. We're not just going to let you off the hook completely. We're going to make you pay half damages so that you're going to be more careful. And now next time you're going to watch this animal because now you know this animal has problems and potentially can do it again. Okay, so that's the machlokas. Tanan hanizik v'hamazik b'tashlumin. This is an interesting language of the Mishnah. Now, what does that mean? It sounds like there's a little bit of give and go over here by both the nizik and the mazik. Now, Bishlam Lamadiyam Palganiska Mamoina, that Ikra and the guy really supposed to pay the full thing, but we're nice and you like to pay half. Haidu de Shach Nizik B'Tashlumin. That's why we see in this language it's Shach Nizik B'Tashlumin. What does that mean? So Rashi helps us out a little bit. Kolaymer mafsid. It means that the nizik is losing out too. The truth is, the nizik is the mazik is losing out because he has to pay half. But the nizik is also losing out because he's not receiving the second half. So therefore, the language of the Mishnah fits nicely. Hanizik v'hamazik b'tashlumin. The nizik also, together with the mazik, ends up losing out. If it's a kanas, which means that the nizik is really not entitled to anything, and obviously he gets a bonus. Okay, obviously he lost out, but at least he's getting more than he was really supposed to get. He got half at least. So hashtadolav didei shakel betashlumin isa. He's getting more than he's really entitled to. How can we say that he's losing out? He's not legally losing out. Practically he is, of course. But it's a kanas, he really shouldn't be entitled to anything legally. So why would we say that he's losing out? So nitzrucha el pchas nevela. So we're talking about a case of pchas nevela. What's pchas nevela? So Rashi reminds us of what we should already remember because we didn't have it too long ago. The whole pchas nevela de niziku. When it comes to pchas nevela, it's on the nizik. The nizik loses out. V'hainu de shaykh nizik b'tashlumin shafil oisu kanas shezichsa loitayra in the noitu kulo. He may not even get that full amount. Why? Because we said the animal dies. So what we do is we look b'shas hamada b'din, right? And at b'shas hamada b'din, so we evaluate the difference between the shas misa and the time that the court case we're involved in this court case. During that time, because it's a carcass, as days, maybe hours go by, it loses value. It loses its freshness, etc. So that difference is not on the mazik, it's on the nizik. And therefore, the mazik only has to pay, because the nizik keeps the nevela, so it's valued based on the moment that it dies. Even though it's true that later on, when, let's say, the court case comes and they need to evaluate and assess this thing, they see that it's less value, we don't care. The reality is, the nizik is only going to be able to receive based on what it was, b'shas misa, and not later on. And therefore, that's a monetary loss for the nizik. And that's potentially l'divrei hakoil. So we end up saying there's trach nevela also. Okay. So pchas nevela hatani le'reisha. We already saw this. Remember? I told you. Tashlumi nezik melam shabal matapim nevela. So what's the difference? Why do we have to? That's what it's coming to tell us over here. So the third tzricha we have over here. We don't usually have three tzrichas on the same almond. Interesting. That you're right. There's a din of pchas nevela that the nizik loses out, not just when it comes to a din of a tam, but also a din of a mu'id. Not just by a mu'id, but also by a tam. Why can't you just say one? We understand the other. Tzricha diyashmin and tam yishum dekata lo'yayit. You can say we're not going to make this mazik lose out so much. We will institute pchas nevela because, again, it's not a mu'id. Right? Again, in fact, if you think about it, if you hold this kanas, the guy really shouldn't have to pay anything. So we're making only to pay half because of kanas. So we're going to also hurt the mazik with pchas nevela? No, it doesn't make sense. So it's going to be that'll be on the nizik. Of a mu'id imuloi. But if, let's say, we're dealing already a shor mu'id, maybe the nizik won't have that on him, but it'll be on the mazik. The yashmin mu'id mishum dekamasham kule. The mu'id, when it comes to a shor mu'id, the guy can say, well, what do you want? I'm paying everything already. I'm already paying so much. So, okay, fine. So at least throw me a little bit of a bone that I don't have to deal with pchas nevela. Because when it comes to chatzi nezek, it's only half. So maybe in that situation, why would we want the nizik to lose out on that end as well? Okay. Tashma. Ma bein tam u'mu'id. What is the difference? We'll see this later on between an ox which is tame, and a mu'id. Okay. So over there it says like this. Shatam Misham Chatzi Nezek Megufo, Mud Misham Nezek Shom in Aliyah. So there's two differences. We already know, obviously, one, you pay either half or full. But also, which we also had on the beginning of this Masechta, that a tam, you only pay from the body of the animal. But when it comes to a mu'id, it's even above and beyond that. So in other words, if you have a weakling little ox that did a lot of damage, it destroyed $10,000 worth of $10,000 worth of stuff with its horn, and it's a tam, but the ox itself is only worth $100. So you don't collect half of the $10,000. That's not what it means when we say chatzei nezek. You can only collect up until the value of the body of that ox. So even though it's true, really did $10,000 of damage, and chatzei nezek should be $5,000. No, you can only collect from its body. You can only collect up until its value, and that's it. Mu'id more than that. So that's one distinction. We mentioned this when it came to chatzei nezek sroiros a couple weeks ago. Now, v'im isa, if it's true that we're making a distinction here as well between a tam and a mu'id, we see nami ha. Why don't we mention this as well? If we're telling us this is the din of kanas, they should also mention, says Rashi, shechatzi niska shel tam kanas, din misham al pi atzmo, mu'id havi moment misham al pi atzmo. This is again the case of moed b'kanas. Moed b'kanas potter. That's true. Moed b'mamoin, you're not potter. So that's a chiluk. So if it's in fact true that there's an opinion, or you can even maybe say that it's kanas, so then that should be mentioned as well as another nafkamina. So Gemara says like this: Tam in mishal. So it says Tam in mishal al piatzmoi, mul mishal al piatzmoi. So it should say that. So Gemara says you're right. It should, but Tana v'shayir. The Tana mentions certain things, but it leaves out some things, and then we always had the same question throughout Shas: My shir d'hai shir. You can't just leave out one thing. If there's a list of 3 things and it mentioned 2 already in the Mishnah, it will mention the third. But if it's an exhaustive list of more than just 3, and there's an additional thing, there's a few other things, or at least even 2 extra things, maybe the Tana won't list all of them. If there's only one thing left, then the Tana will mention that one thing. It's not just going to exclude one thing. But when it comes to excluding 2, that it may do. Okay. So the answer is shir chatzi kaifer. It also leaves out the din of chatzi kaifer. Says Rashi, mu'id shehemis as adam. We know that a mu'id that kills a person, which we just talked about before, misham kaiful yarshim. You have to pay kaifer to that person who died, to their heirs. The tam afil chatzi kaifer lo mishalim. However, when it comes to a tam, you don't do anything. So the question is, do you pay chatzi kaifer? So maybe it's mentioning that you don't even pay chatzi kaifer, which again would be another distinction. So imisham chatzi kaifer lav shirhu. Now that's not true. Hamad Rabbi Siglili the Emer tam misham chatzi kaifer. So again, this is a question because maybe this is according to the sheet that you do pay chatzi kaifer. So therefore, that really is not limited, and therefore this kind of becomes a little bit of a problem and shows a little bit of a proof that the din l'chayra should be that chatzi nezek is really mamoin. Tashma. As we continue to test Bava mid base. Tashma. So the Gemara says as follows: Hamis shoyri es ploini, o shoro shel ploini. If let's say person declares that my ox killed someone, or your ox, someone's ox, so he has to pay. So what? This is a case of moida. He's being moida to what happened. So moida b'kanas, we know you're potter. So how come it says you mishalim al piatzmoi my love batam? If we're talking about a tam, So you shouldn't have to pay because might have been kanas. If it's in fact the case of kanas, then you should be potter. So against a raya that's not kanas. Lo b'muad. This statement is only when it comes to a muad. Therefore, what? Avotam mai hachanamidain mishalman al piatzmoi. So we're making a distinction between a muad and a tam, because a tam you would not pay because it's kanas, and moedim kanas is potter, but by muad it's not kanas because it's mamoin, so you have to pay even if you admit. So that sounds all great, but it just doesn't flow properly. Hachiada tani seifa. Why does the seifa give a totally different case? Hamish shiris avdoi shilpoini, that my ox killed your eved. And Mishalom al pi atzmo. In that situation, you don't pay based on his admission, because certainly when it comes to the din of killing an eved, in which there's a chi of lamed of shloishim sloyim, they have to pay a certain amount of money. That doesn't make any difference who this eved is. Even if, let's say, this eved is only worth a dinner, I don't mean a meal, but the coin. So then, why would you have to pay 30 sloyim? That's a lot of money. It's a kanas. So certainly it's a kanas. So the Sefer gives us a case of kanas. So why does it then have to go and talk about a totally different type of person, a person, just distinguish it within itself, which the Gemara does so many times, which would be the more logical approach. It should make a distinction with the thing itself, with the shore itself. But only when it comes to muad because it's mamoin. So the fact that it doesn't say that, well, chayra is proof. Marin says that's not a proof. Kula b'muad kamairi. That whole statement over there is only talking about cases of muad. It doesn't want to get into the situation of tam at all. But if it would want to talk about tam, yes, moed knas would be potter. Toshma zeklal. This is the general rule. Kol mishalom yoyser al mashihizik. Anytime, like for example, the din of shloishim sloim of an eved, where you have to pay more than the damage that took place, in mishalom al piatzmo, because that's kanas. My love, hapochais b'mashihizik mishalom. It's only if you pay more than the damage, it's considered kanas. But if you pay less than the damage, it's not considered to be kanas. What's the case of paying less? That's chatzi nezek. So we see again that chatzi nezek is not a case of kanas. It's saying over here that kanas is only when you have to pay more than you have to. Lo, hakamashi hizik mishalim. If it's exactly the same, that's mamoin. Of a pachis mai hachanabi lo mishalim. So in that situation, you wouldn't have to pay. And the truth is, by the way we're framing it, he doesn't have to pay anything, right? And therefore, the chatzi nezek is an interesting way to maybe answer it. The chatzi nezek is more than he has to pay, but that's not how the Gemara is understanding it. It means the actual damage. If you ever have to pay more than the actual damage that was incurred, that's kanas. Less is not kanas. So chatzi nezek kochar is not kanas. We're saying no, that's not true. It just means it's only mamoin when it's exactly the same. Mashma of pachais mai hachanam b'dolam mishal, because it's kanas. Ihachi adatani zeklal kol mishal yoyso masha hisakin mishal mal piatzmoi. Why does it say that way? Listen, zeklal. Let us say it this way: kol shein mishalim kamasha hizik demashma pachais umashma yoyser tiyofta. It would have said it much more clearly if, in fact, you're right. So therefore, it's a tiyofta. It can't be. This brisa must be a clear indicator that chatzi nezek is mamoin tiyofta. So more answers like this: v'hilchasa pal ganizka kanasa. The halacha is that when it comes to chatzi nezek, you only pay. It is kanas. So, what do you mean? Tiyofta v'hilchasa? How's that shaykh to say? There's a tiyofta, and it's also the halacha. We just refuted it. In time of my havi tiyofta. So why did we say it was a tiyofta? What was the problem with this whole statement? Mishum deloy katani kamosha hizik, because they didn't say it the right way. The truth is, there's a reason why I didn't say it that way. Lupsikale. couldn't do it because it's not always the truth. What do you mean? Remember again, back on Daf Gimel, when it comes to an animal that shoots out a pebble while it's walking, in which you pay chatzi nezek sroros to hilchas gemirula. That's a halacha Moshe Sinai. The memoinahu that we said it's a mamoin, which means in that case, even though normally it's kanas, chatzi nezek is kanas, but this is an exception that it's called mamoin. For that reason, it does not mention it. That's the answer. So the question is, so then why does it use the lashon of tiyufta? Maybe it should have said the lashon of kasha, because so tiyufta is an interesting point. It's an interesting way of understanding the word tiyufta. Most of us understand tiyufta is there's no answer, and kasha means there's an answer, but it's a daichak answer. Tiyufta over here could be proving that there could be an answer, but it is a very, very hard answer. A kasha is, it's a question. The answer is not so great, but there is a pretty solid answer, is a valid reason for it. Over here, it's maybe saying it's less of a valid reason for it. You have to think about, again, the issue with why it says tiyufta. Maybe it shouldn't say tiyufta now, maskan, it should now say kasha. Okay. Now, so now that we're saying that, okay, this is the halacha, that it's kanas, so hai kalba de ochel imre. If you have a dog that ate a sheep, Rashi says kvasim, b'shunra de ochla tarnagoyla, or you have a cat that ate a tarnagol, a chicken, a hen, so that's mishunahu. This is not normal. This is not normal behavior. As Rashi says, the ain darken bakach, the Bavi told the Karen l'sham chatzi nezek. So since, even though you would normally say if it eats, that should be shane, which you pay nezek shalim. But if it's something which is abnormal, so then in that situation, it's only considered to be a tolda of Karen, because it's kavanas lahazik, and therefore you pay chatzi nezek. V'loy magbinan bebavel, but you don't collect in Bavel. Why not? What's the difference in Bavel? So Rashi says, the ain't done dini knasais el besmuchin bebavel ain't smicha. The only time they done dini knasais is someone who has smicha. It doesn't mean the smicha we have nowadays. So therefore, because Bavel they didn't give out smicha, they didn't judge dini knasais. So therefore, interestingly enough, the din in Bavel of chatzi nezek just doesn't apply. So in Bavel, if you would have an ox that would gore as a tom, you wouldn't pay anything. Okay. Bahani mili baravravi. This is only if we're dealing with large chickens, big sheep, because it's really not normal that a dog or a cat are going to be able to attack and consume them. Bazutri, but they're tiny little defenseless creatures, urchehu, then it's the normal way, and therefore in that case we would say that you would be chayiv. The itafas loy mafkinan minei. If let's say the nizik who lived in Bavel grabbed hold of the money that he felt he was entitled to, we're not going to take it away from him, and we're not going to judge him. We're not going to judge the case. But if he takes it, we're not going to do anything about it. The Omar, and if he says, Kavali Zmana Zimna, give me time, does Lina already Israel Kavinan lay. I want to be able to take this court to Eretz Yisrael where they will judge it, so then we're going to say, okay, you may do so. The Ilo Ozel, and if the Mazik doesn't go to Eretz Yisrael, Misham Tinan lay, then we will excommunicate him. So Bavel just has their hands tied. They can't do the case. It's not that we're not going to support the nizik if he wants the case to be brought elsewhere where the case can be heard. And either way, we're going to put him into cherem until the damage is addressed. Mid Rabbi Nosson, the side of Nosson, Gadol Adam Kelev Ra b'tach beso. You can't have a rabid dog in your house. Yamid Sum Ruah b'tach beso. You can't have this terrible ladder right outside your house, which maybe someone will use. So if a person has this ox that we see did damage, even though technically we can't do anything about it, we can say you must do something about this animal. You cannot keep this animal in this community anymore. We just will not accept this. And if you don't do something about your animal, then we are going to put you into cherem. So the Beis Din of Bavel will do some things, but they're not actually going to literally go and listen to the court case. Okay, we will stop here. Let's look at maybe another question. Yes, question 8. So one certainly has to do with being moide b'kanas, whether you're potter. Let's see what he writes. Or as we just saw. Okay, let's see a couple more test questions. TA 3. Kalba de'achol imra kalma mishalim. How much should you pay if you have a wild dog that eats up a sheep? Lamaskana. So this is what he says. Birav ravi chati nezek. Again, obviously, if we're dealing not in Bavel. Bezutri nezek shalim. That's all they were looking for. Okay. So again, TA 3. Hay kalba the achol imre mishuna the achol tarnagoyla. Again, it's mishuna, and that's what you pay chati nezek. But it depends. Only it's baravravi because it's mishuna. Of a bezutrim, if it's a large animal, so then in that situation, even a large animal. If it's a small animal, so we're going to say that's the norm. It's normal that's going to be attacked, and you pay nezek shalom. Question TB3. Shum kesef, shava kesef. Okay, I did that. I just didn't mark it down, which we talked about on yesterday's daf and Yudal Lebez. Let's see TB4. Hanizik v'mazik b'tashlumin heichim meshkachas lo nizik shaykh b'tashlumin. So one shot, as we said, is if you're dealing with, if you hold chatzi nezek is mama is mamoin bishul mamadir and paganiska mamoina hainu shak nizik b'tashlumin, because he really should get the whole thing, but he's only getting half. Or alternatively, he'll kanas, but there's also pchas neveila. Ad kan.